Oh boy, the fun of audio. So we just spent a half hour trying to get that sucker to work. What do you know? That's how it goes sometimes. Yeah, it's monitoring on my phone. Yeah, so for those that are interested in what happened, which I will probably end up deleting most of that, OBS was being really fun and dumb. and yeah, it basically glitched out to where the audio that I'm sending from my microphone and from Pro Tools over to OBS. OBS created a feedback loop in itself and wasn't pushing audio properly. So that's one of those wonderful tech things where you just turn it off and turn it back on, and then voila, it works again. So what do you know? Oh, righty. Well, I guess I can just start all over then, since we didn't really get anything from the beginning. So yeah. So we'll just pretend that, well, that you couldn't hear or see me anyway. So welcome, yay, after a half hour of testing. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Scott. I am one of the co-owners here at Central Oregon Recording, and we are starting a brand new live stream series called Deep Dive. So every Monday morning, 10 a.m., we will be going live right here from the studio to talk about anything and everything dealing with audio. So, mixing, recording, mastering, even gear reviews, etc. We will be diving into things and having some fun and try to teach you some new skills for 2021. Also, this is an extension for us. We also teach recording and mixing through one of the private schools here. So this is just kind of an everyday thing for us where we are teaching people anyway. So, free information is always good, especially in something like this, working in a trade. This is definitely a hands-on kind of job. So it's always good to get kind of firsthand experience of what it's like doing this for a living. So without further ado, let's dive in here. So today in Deep Dive, we will be looking at analog plugins in the box. This is something that comes up quite a bit with analog plugins and how they work, what they do, are they worth it, etc., etc. So let's kind of talk about what analog plugins are. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up. Let's create a new track here. We have this wonderful little aux track. And let's see, I'm going to pick something here. We'll just, we'll throw this on the kick send for now. Oh, you hear the beep. All right. And let's see if it'll let me bring this in. Oh, you won't. Okay, well, let's do this instead. We'll just do another new track here. And we'll call it Ascend. Ta-da! It's Ascend. Okay. We'll get a few of these set up here. Alrighty, so analog plugins. Let's just go find one real quick. Are emulations of, well, analog gear. So like this. This is a emulation from Slate Digital for a Verymu compressor. The idea behind an analog plugin is it gives you or anybody the opportunity to use a analog styled piece of gear even if you don't own it, which not everyone's going to have access to a real Verymu. Or if we go look, let's go pull up like the gray, an SSL bus. There's all kinds of stuff in here that we can look at. Even Clairphonic. This is from Cush Audio. Take a second to load too. But these plugins are emulations of actual analog gear. So pieces of hardware that you would use out in the real world, which can tend to be kind of expensive sometimes. In fact, most of the time. So instead of going out and buying like a Clairphonic, which I think are a little over $3,000, these plugin companies make emulations of them in the box. Now, not all analog plugins are the same. There are digital analog plugins, and then there are full analog plugins. That sounds kind of weird, but some plugins that you can find will not saturate, distort, etc., like a normal analog piece of gear. If you drive information or you drive your signal too hot into analog gear, it will start to distort. It will start to clip, which can be very nice. It's a very nice sound that we like to have. However, digital, more like a digital style, that it looks like an analog plugin, but no matter how much you put into it, it still isn't going to change its sound. So let's go pull up just a standard old EQ like this. Okay, so all I have going is a wonderful sine wave, just a 1K hertz. Yeah, nice and annoying. So that's what we have going on here. Just that sound. Now, if I pull down our send here, I will. Oh, why are you still going? Ah, you're going through that one too. That's why. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to move our EQ down here, and I'm going to open up, and we're just going to go find a gain plugin. Okay, so I'm going to take this, and we're going to drive it. So you can see here on the meters that we're driving super hard into this. In fact, if we go up into pre-fader metering and take a look, you can see we're driving it 9 dB over. So if I bring this fader up, it sounds exactly the same. There is no difference, even though we are technically clipping this plugin over 9 dB. So we haven't affected or hurt anything with this plugin. So let's go ahead and take that EQ out. Let's go throw in, if I can find, all right. Here's one from Sound Toys. Now this is an analog style plugin. And if we take the gain off for a second, just so we can hear it normally, that's what it sounds like going through. Now I'm going to add that gain back in. Now we are, of course, clipping this SIEQ. And you can hear it. So it's actually modeled to clip or to saturate like the actual analog piece is. Why does this matter? Well, this matters immensely. What you're hearing is what we like to do out in the hardware world, excuse me, where we start to saturate or clip or compress things. This can be really good. Excuse me. Yeah, so this is something that you can use, but you have to be very careful with what you do, with what you're doing and how you do it. This really comes down to gain staging in the box. So with the way digital audio workstations, DAWs, are built, you actually have almost unlimited headroom. I mean, not really, but you'll probably never actually internally clip anything. Whenever you clip something, it's usually coming out of the master, going through your converters, and you're clipping converters coming out. It's what gives you that really nasty distortion sound. Otherwise, the distortion and saturation, all of that fun sound that we get, that is actually coming from analog modeled plugins. So gain staging into these plugins really makes a difference. So let's pull the send back up. Okay, now So you can kind of hear, that sounds pretty normal. Right there, as we reach the top, you can actually see it here. We're at negative 0.09. So we're almost clipping. This is the point of where this EQ happens to start to saturate. So by getting this plug-in and you just use it on a normal track and you haven't gain stage properly into it and you're trying to get it to distort or to start clipping like that, you're probably going, whoa, wait, what's happening? Now, granted, this one has a drive on it, so of course you can drive it harder. So if I pull this up, let's pull this gain down a little bit just so we're in the clear. Pull this up. You do have that control there, but not all plugins have that. Some plugins you actually need to manually go in and do that with your gain staging. So this becomes really important when working with analog plugins. Because again, the idea is we're trying to get the color, the sound of that piece of analog gear. We like that. That's kind of the non-linearities and the things that we enjoy about analog. And the reason we enjoy them is this is what we grew up listening to. We listen to music that's been recorded through transformers and op amps and tubes and all of this beautiful gear. But again, if you don't have the money for it, we have analog plugins. Now, of course, the question always comes up, are analog plugins actually worth it? And my answer is absolutely. They're totally worth it. So let's look at something here. I'll go ahead and take the gain plugin off there, and we'll take that out for now. So we've got that EQ bypass. So I have VMR pulled up here, again, from Slate Digital. So let's take a look at something that they have. We will go and find, here, a preamp. Okay, so we can see the level coming in here, and we've got the virtual drive. So again, I will bring this send up. You can hear where that's hitting. Now, granted, we're at the maximum of this. Well, that doesn't really work. So what we should be doing, we drive this a little more, about right there. You can see we're hitting that 0 point, which is usually, if you're looking at a VU meter, that 0 point and going into the red is where things start, analog gear starts to like to saturate. And we gained a little bit, we still kind of way up there. Let's look at something else. Let's look at the 76. Can't even touch it. On its virtual drive, we're not even close. Oh, started for a second there. Oh, interesting. Drive it more. There it is. Okay, so different plugins are going to saturate differently. They're going to sound different. Even pulling in something like this. For those of you that don't know what this is or aren't familiar with this is a model of an 1176. It's a compressor. Of course, compressors, what they compress the signal. They make our dynamic range smaller. They bring the loudest things down and bring the quietest things up. That's what a compressor does. You're compressing things. Well, these you can also run as a distortion box. Crank that up. We'll hear it. There it is. So even in the compressors, they have analog color. In fact, we can even view this. We're going to pull up, go back to that Very-Mu, for example. Here it is. Let's close that guy. Okay. We're going to change our signal generator here from a sine wave to pink noise to give us an overall amplitude across the frequency spectrum. And let's bring this up. Sounds like a television white noise kind of thing. How lovely. But I'm going to take this in and out. Let's see if we can hear a difference. Okay, let's actually look at what's going on when we do that. This will be fun. I'm going to pull up our analyzer here. And let's see here. Will it let me keep it on top? I think it will. That's okay. We'll take a look, though. So we'll grab this plug-in. Let's do this. Make it even easier on ourselves. We really don't need to see that. Okay. So, with it on, I'll now bypass it. There we go. You actually hear the top end comes in more with this plugin in. So it's actually adding an EQ. So these are the things that analog plugins are modeling. They're modeling different kinds of EQ, different kinds of saturation, things that actually happen within those boxes with the tubes and the transformers and the op amps and all this good stuff that's built in. These plugins, these manufacturers are taking time to model what those actually do, which is fantastic for us. Another way we can look at this, or even hear it, let's go back into our virtual mix rack here. And actually, let's do this. We're gonna do these in mono. Mono is good. So mono aux, and it will come from our send header side. Okay, and let's just go ahead and duplicate that. Okay, those are duplicated. So what I'm going to do for now, let's say goodbye to those. I want to pull up VMR on here, and I'm going to just use the trimmer that we have right here. All right, let's go ahead. There's our white noise. See it coming through. Okay, what just happened? Well, both of these are still playing. We have the auxes playing, but I've flipped the phase on one. I've reversed it. I've shifted the polarity basically 180 degrees. So because we have the same exact signal, by flipping the phase out of phase 180 degrees, as you can see right here, it's pointed up, what we're doing is we're actually canceling it out. As the waveform goes up on one, it's going down on the other. So they're literally canceling each other out. It's like they're doing this. We hear no noise. Now, the great thing with this, now, anything that we put on from here, we can actually hear the difference that it's adding. For example, let's search through. Let's grab the 1176. Now, it's really quiet, but it's there. It is. In fact, you can hear it. Slight change. In fact, you can even see it. All right, I'll drop that back down. Let's look at something else. Look at the vintage one. Now, see, this looks and sounds different. You can see it has a completely different curve on there. let's look at a preamp. A lot of low end in there. As you can see, as I increase, so this is a really easy way to try and figure out what's actually going on with plugins or the analog modeling. This is a great way to learn what your plugins are doing. So one of my favorites to use is the Slate VCC channels and the mix bus. What these plugins are doing are modeling specific desks, so analog desks, the circuitry in the desk. So right now it's set for a Brit 4KE, which would be an SSL E channel. So again, what you can see here is the actual EQ curve of this desk. Of course, we drive it, you can see what it's doing there as well. Let's switch to the 4KG desk. Again, SSL 4KG. Okay, let's look, so the USA, it's API. See how much low end is in that, where it's sitting. Go to the Neve desk. Lots of low end, lots. Kind of scooped upper mids. Trident. Scooped low mids right here. Lots of lows, kind of slowly ramping up into the highs. And then the 50s tube desk. Look at that. Huge dip right there at the 6K mark. So each of these has a specific sound. I'll turn this one up. That's what that one sounds like. Go back to the Trident. The Neve. The API. 4KG. 4KE. Okay. Now, of course, these aren't the only ones that do this. Take that out. Let's go pull up something from Brainworks. Let's see here. Console N. So this is Plugin Alliance and Brainworks. This is their Neve channel. This is what they've got going on. So why does this look different than the Slate? Well, they modeled different desks. This gets me to a really, really important point with all of this kind of stuff, is this. Analog desks all sound different. Analog gear all sounds different. That's what they do. So this stuff makes a difference on what piece of hardware they modeled. So this gets into one of the big ones with 1176. It's something that we see quite consistently. You always see pretty much every audio company that I've seen that does plugins has probably modeled the 1176. And there's always the question of, why do we need another 1176 plugin? There are so many out there. Why do we need another one? An LA2A. Why do we need that compressor again? We have so many, like Sound Toys and Softtube and Slate and this and that and UAD and all of these guys, they all make one. Well, here's the kicker. They may not have modeled the same unit. Why does it matter? Because these units have lived specific lives. They've been in different types of climates. They've gone through different changes. Maybe they've been upkept differently. All of these things make a difference when you're dealing with hardware, because the components age in a certain way and they might age differently than the next one. So it does make a difference that every company is doing their own version, because in reality, there might be slight differences in the analog modeling that they did, giving you a different sound. Am I saying go out and buy every single one? Absolutely not. But if you own a piece of hardware, or let's say you have the plug-in and you're looking at buying the hardware, understand that the settings, when you're setting the knobs or anything like that, or the sound might not be exactly the same, which is okay. It really doesn't matter. The point is that the analog plug-in or the hardware will sound slightly different, but get you pretty much the same results. So by having a few different versions, of course, in the box is great, but also on the hardware side can be great too. It really depends on your workflow. If you like to touch knobs and have that haptic feedback of turning things, hardware is nice. But don't be discouraged by the fact that there's also all of these plugins, because these plugins can do the same thing. Just again, remember that they are slightly different or modeled on different ones. So they're going to have their own flavor. That's kind of the beauty of analog, is the wrongness of it, that not everything is exactly the same. Now, if you want exactly the same, that's where the stuff in the box comes in really handy, right? Because if you have the same plugin and you're using it 20 times, it's going to sound, distort, etc., the same way on every single thing you put it on. You know that when you hit this point in the plugin, it's going to start to clip or start to saturate a little bit. So you know where to hit it every time. Whereas if it was hardware and you had two of them, one of them might take a little more gain or a little less gain or whatever to get the same kind of result out of it. I mean, we deal with that. We've got some 1176s sitting right here in the desk. And you have to set them slightly differently just to get pretty much the same kind of reaction out of them. But that's to be expected. So again, if you're looking at analog plugins, gain staging is very important, but also remember that these were modeled on different things. But we can jump back in and take a look at a few more things here. So let's go to something from Waves. Going down the list. Okay. Let's grab. Here we go. There it is. So, the Puig Tech, which is basically it's a model of the program version of these pool techs. And you can see we've got some different settings in here. We turn it on and off. You notice in the plugin, we're still getting sound. We're still seeing the noise come through from the pink noise, even though we're turning it on and off. So this is something to be aware of when you're dealing with these kind of plugins. Some plugins, their bypass button inside the actual plugin doesn't actually bypass the circuitry. It does, but it doesn't. The non-linearities and everything that are built in are still there. So it's as if you were basically using the bypass on the actual hardware unit, which would mean, like on this one, for example, just taking out your EQ boots that you're doing. This one, of course, also has some cycling ability here. So you can add in, some different, like running on different kinds of power because they did sound different or would have a certain kind of hum to them. But again, this kind of gives you that idea. Mute that for a second. So let me grab something else from Wave. Let's see what else do that from them. Let's see here. Here we go. Here's Wave's version of the SSL. Now, isn't that interesting? We've added this SSL channel on here, which this is, supposed to be an analog modeled plugin. But yeah, I don't see anything. Do you? I don't hear it. I don't see it, which is very interesting. Huh. Very interesting. So in this instance, Waves most likely didn't model the nonlinearities and the sound of this specific desk. But they probably modeled the EQ and the compressor and the gate and all that kind of stuff. Now, you also see there's an analog button here. So what happens if we put this on? Nothing. Also, very interesting that for whatever reason, when Waves modeled this, they didn't model the circuitry of the desk. Now, granted, as you hear there, they definitely have the EQs. You can even see the bands. So this can be very fun to learn the width and the design of the EQ bands when you're working with plugins to see what they're actually doing. So you can see here, I go completely narrow. That's what it looks like. Completely wide. That's what it looks like. So you can actually hear and see what they're doing. But it's very interesting they didn't actually model anything else. So let me go find the Brainworks version of this. BX, and that would be the, let's see, that was a G channel. Let's look at their G channel. Wow. Okay. So here is Brainworks version of the G channel on the SSL desk. You can see and hear that there is a difference. In fact, that's kind of similar to what Slate was kind of doing. Now, the great thing with the Brainworks stuff is you, of course, have different channels that you can look at. So the TMT, it's basically meant to model slight variations in channel to channel. So here, let me boost this up. So basically what Brainworks went and did, they actually went through and modeled each individual channel and to try and figure out, you know, which one or which ones, you know, like the EQ curves and stuff on each channel, it's everything's set to 0, you know, of course, and they went through all the EQ of, you know, full out to nothing. But as you can see, they probably went through, say, like a 48 channel SSL desk. They took the modeling of each channel so that way you can build it in to your stuff and actually build modeling in as if you were working on that desk. So, because again, like we're talking about analog. So even like that on a desk, you're dealing with differences between each channel. And that's what kind of gives the sound of the 60s and 70s and the 80s. And even now, still to this day, of all the musicians that are recording on these big desks, there are slight differences and wrongness and nonlinearities and all this great stuff that adds color and flavor to things. So anyway, this is a great way to test everything. Again, all we did, we have a signal generator sending out a sound. I've got it duplicated, so we have 2 of them. We flipped one out of phase, and then we put whatever we wanted to hear on the other one, and voila, that gives us the ability to do this. So this is a great way to test out anything that you have. We'll even look at the tape machine, because, you know, why not? Now that's kind of fun. You can see the low end boost. You can hear the actual wobble and everything that's going on with the tape machine. You're dealing with stuff. We go into the settings here. You can see the wow and flutter. We increase that. Check it out. It's still kind of there. We're dealing with noise reduction. Just flipping through settings. But you get the idea. If you want to learn more about what's actually happening with the plugins and getting the sounds, this is a great way to just learn, to test, to try. Because if you know what your plugins will do, if you know how they're working and what you're getting out of them, then of course, you know how to use them better. You can be creative. This is the science part behind all of this. So diving in and actually figuring out what your analog plugins are doing, or which ones you enjoy, which ones you like. You know, maybe you like specific ones for specific things. It's just like learning a piece of hardware. All of these are just tools to be used, tools that you have in your arsenal, depending on what plugins you have. And they can be used in great, great ways to get the sounds that you're looking for. So I hope this was informative. I apologize about the beginning and getting us rolling, but we got it moving along. Yeah, and I hope you can kind of go forth and start messing with your plugins and kind of understanding what they're doing to your sound. Because again, if you're a chef and you know what your spices taste like, you know what you can add in spice-wise to make a great dish. If you're a painter and you can see your color palette, you know what to paint with. It's the same idea here. If you know what your plugins sound like, or even your hardware sounds like, if you know where it starts to saturate or what it starts to do to the sound, or how wide or how narrow your EQ cues are, well, then you have a better understanding of what you're doing. So go do this with your own plugins and your own DAW. It's, again, not very hard. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us so we can walk you through the setup. And this will work in any DAW. So it doesn't have to be Pro Tools. It can be Logic. It can be Studio One, Cubase, Reaper, etc., etc., etc. But go test your plugins. Go learn what you're doing. Go learn what you're working with. And I guarantee you this will help you make better decisions when you start getting into mixing and your recording process for your songs. All right. That's pretty much all I have for today. So thank you guys so much. Again, if you happen to have any questions at all, just reach out to us. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. And if you want to be notified, hit the notification bell. You'll be notified every time we go live. We will be doing the deep dive every Monday morning from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat and tag us at Central Oregon Recording so we can see them pop up, and I will get them on the screen so I can answer anything for you. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we will see you next time.